It is April 14th, 1912. The Atlantic lies still, impossibly still. No wind, no waves, only the gentle rhythm of a ship gliding through glass. The RMS Titanic, the largest moving object ever built by human hands, drifts beneath a cold, starlit sky. The air is sharp, almost brittle, holding a silence so complete that even the sea seems to be listening. On deck, passengers wrapped in overcoats admire the heavens. There's no moon tonight, only stars, countless and brilliant, stretching across the horizon like spilled diamonds. Some claim they've never seen the night look so clear. They don't know it's the kind of clarity that only comes before disaster. Below, inside the glowing heart of the ship, life moves with quiet contentment. In the first-class lounge, soft piano music echoes beneath crystal chandeliers. A few couples linger over champagne, their laughter mixing with the hum of conversation. They believe they are sailing on a fortress, a triumph of technology, too grand to fail. In second class, the mood is simpler but no less happy. Travelers read, talk, write letters to loved ones across the sea. A group of young men plays cards, joking about how soon they'll be stepping onto American soil. For many, this voyage is a promise of new beginnings, of better lives. And deep below, in third class, the energy is entirely different. Families huddle in narrow bunks, rocking babies to sleep, dreaming of cities they've only seen in photographs. The smell of coal, oil, and sea air fills the corridors. They are the hum of humanity, the pulse of hope running through the ship's steel veins. Yet above it all, on the bridge, the officers stand watch. The temperature has dropped sharply. Breath fogs in the air. Ice warnings have come in throughout the day, 6 in total, but to most aboard, it's nothing more than routine. After all, the Titanic is unsinkable. Isn't she? At 10:00 p.m., the ship sails at full speed just under 22 knots. The sea remains like glass, smooth and deceptive. The lookouts in the crow's nest peer ahead, straining their eyes against the darkness. Without wind or waves, icebergs give no warning splash. They simply sit, waiting, silent. The captain, Edward Smith, walks quietly from the bridge, taking one last look at the horizon. He's commanded ships for nearly 40 years. He knows this sea, its moods, its tricks. Tonight, though, it feels different. There's an edge in the air, a stillness too deep. He returns to his cabin to rest. It will be his final night at sea. The clock ticks past 11:00 p.m. Most passengers have gone to bed. The lights of the ship glow softly against the dark expanse of water. A floating palace adrift in nothingness. The engines hum steadily. Somewhere in the distance, a faint ripple breaks across the surface, then fades. Up in the crow's nest, 2 men stand wrapped in heavy coats. Frost has gathered on the railings. Their eyes ache from staring into the void, black ocean blending into blacker sky. They have no binoculars tonight. They were forgotten in a locked cabinet miles away in Southampton. At 11:30 p.m., the Titanic continues forward, unaware of what lies just ahead. The temperature hovers at 28 degrees Fahrenheit. A layer of ice begins to form on the ship's rigging. Stars glimmer like cold fire. The wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, are still sending messages, their Morse keys tapping rapidly, relaying passenger telegrams to Cape Race, Newfoundland. Ice warnings keep coming through, but the men are buried in work. The bridge never sees the last message. It's the one that matters most. The minutes slide by, 11:35, 11:36. In the distance, an iceberg drifts silently across the ship's path. It has traveled thousands of miles from the glaciers of Greenland, breaking free months ago. Now it floats, dark and motionless, its jagged peak glistening faintly in the starlight, a ghost of ice, waiting. On board, the hum of the engines continues. In the Marconi room, sparks flash as wireless signals crackle through the air. In the cabins, the wealthy sleep behind polished oak doors. In the boiler rooms, men shovel coal into roaring furnaces, stripped to their undershirts, their skin shining with sweat despite the freezing air above. It is the picture of progress, industry, elegance, and human ambition all pushing forward through the night. At 11:39 p.m., a faint glimmer appears ahead, a blur against the stars. For a heartbeat, it looks like nothing at all. Then the shape grows, pale, silent, enormous. the ocean sound softens, a low rumble fades in heartbeat-like. At 11:40 p.m., a bell rings 3 times, and the calm, perfect night, the illusion of safety shatters forever. The music swells, low strings, tension rising. For the next 2 hours and 40 minutes, the Titanic will fight a losing battle against time, steel, and the sea itself. What follows is not chaos at once, but confusion, disbelief, and the slow realization that everything they believed in, everything they built, is about to vanish beneath the ice-cold Atlantic. It is 11:40 p.m. For a moment, no one knows why the bell has rung. Then a voice from the crow's nest. Iceberg right ahead. The message races down through the ship, quick and urgent. On the bridge, the helmsman spins the wheel hard to port. The engines reverse, but at this speed and with a ship this massive, turning is not a simple act of will. It is a slow, agonizing dance between momentum and hope. Out ahead, the iceberg looms larger, no longer a blur but a mountain of frozen white, towering high above the waterline. Against the black ocean it glows faintly blue, the light of the stars caught in its surface. Seconds stretch like minutes. The ship begins to turn, the hull groans under the strain. For a heartbeat it seems they might clear it. Then a sound like tearing metal, a long, low scrape that vibrates through the decks like the growl of some unseen beast. Soft, metallic tearing sound fades under narration. Passengers barely feel it. To some, it's nothing more than a gentle vibration, a subtle shudder beneath their beds. In the smoking rooms and cabins, they glance up, then return to their books, their games, their dreams. But deep below the decks, men see the truth. In the forward boiler rooms, seawater bursts through rivets and seams, slicing through the air like knives of ice. Coal dust swirls as the lights flicker. The first compartments flood almost instantly, the sound of rushing water overwhelming the roar of the furnaces. It happens quietly, no crash, no explosion, just a steady, relentless invasion of the sea. Up on deck, the officers exchange uncertain looks. No one quite believes what has happened. The Titanic was built to survive such things, wasn't she? With 16 watertight compartments, even 4 could flood and she would still float. That's what everyone was told, but in those lower decks, something else is happening. The iceberg's underwater shelf, sharp, jagged, invisible, has torn open the hull along nearly 300 feet. 6 compartments, not 4, are taking on water. Within minutes, the forward sections are flooding faster than any pump can manage. The sea has begun its quiet work. At 11:50, 10 minutes after the collision, the ship's bow is already dipping slightly into the water. Few notice, the engines stop. The sudden silence feels almost peaceful, but that peace hides something terrible, a stillness before awakening. Stewards are sent to inspect the lower decks. They return pale, whispering what they've seen, water knee-deep, rising fast. Captain Smith is called to the bridge. He listens, then orders the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, to assess the damage. Andrews disappears into the lower decks with a flashlight and a clipboard. When he returns, he says nothing for a long moment. Then softly he says the words that seal their fate: the ship will sink. At first, no one believes him, not the officers, not even the captain. It's unthinkable. The Titanic, the unsinkable ship doomed on her maiden voyage. It defies reason, it defies pride, but mathematics has no sympathy. With 6 compartments open to the sea, each new gallon of water pulls the next below the line. The forward bulkheads, though watertight, stop only so high. As the bow sinks, the Atlantic pours over each like a staircase, flooding one after another. The end is no longer a question of if, only when. A faint heartbeat, like thump, begins under the narration, mimicking the slow rhythm of engines long stopped. Above deck, the air grows colder. Frost forms on railings. The stars seem sharper now, almost cruel in their beauty. Passengers begin to wake. Some step out into the corridors, confused by the silence, the odd tilt of the floor beneath their feet. Stewards move quietly through the halls, reassuring them it's only a precaution. A few return to bed. Others, uneasy, put on coats and step outside. At 12:05 a.m., lifeboats are uncovered for the first time. The order seems unnecessary to many, a simple precaution, the officers say. No one wants to alarm the guests. Still, the crew moves briskly, their breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Ropes are uncoiled. Davits creak. The metallic smell of salt and frost fills the deck. Down below in the mailroom, water crashes through the door, swallowing sacks of letters, millions of messages that will never be delivered. In the cargo hold, seawater rises past cages of birds and crates of belongings. In the boiler rooms, firemen climb higher, abandoning furnaces as the water reaches their knees. The sound is deafening, rushing, hissing, roaring like the voice of the ocean reclaiming what was always hers. By 12:15 a.m., the list to port is visible. Dishes slide from tables. A few passengers joke nervously. Others begin to worry. In first class, evening gowns and tuxedos appear on deck, disbelief written across elegant faces. In third class, confusion reigns. Doors are locked, passages unfamiliar. Many don't understand English. They gather their children, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. No one realizes it yet, but the time they have left can be measured not in hours, but in breaths. At 12:20, Captain Smith gives his first true order of the night. Send the distress signal. In the wireless room, sparks flash as the Morse key begins to tap. CQD, CQD, come quick, danger. Far out on the Atlantic, faint signals echo back ghostly, distant. The nearest ship, Californian, lies only a few miles away, its lights visible on the horizon, but its operator has gone to bed. The radio is silent. The sound of static fades in, then cuts out silence. Above, the ship's great funnels stand against the sky, black smoke rising into a field of stars. The Atlantic laps higher along the hull. The temperature continues to fall 28 degrees, the freezing point of salt water. The passengers still don't know the truth. Many still laugh. Some sip coffee in the lounge, convinced they'll be sailing again by morning. But deep within the ship, the water keeps rising, quiet, unstoppable, patient. The Titanic has been mortally wounded, and though the music still plays and the lights still glow, the ocean has already begun its slow claim. It is 12:30 a.m. on April 15, 1912. 50 minutes have passed since the Titanic struck the iceberg. For most aboard, the disaster is still a mystery and inconvenience, perhaps, but not a catastrophe. But below deck, the truth is undeniable. The forward compartments are gone. The ship is slowly, steadily sinking. On the bridge, Captain Smith stands motionless, the weight of realization settling over him. The pride of his career, the largest ship in the world, is dying under his command. He gives the order to prepare all lifeboats for lowering. Still, the word sinking is not spoken aloud. Above, passengers wander the boat deck in overcoats and nightgowns, their breath visible in the frigid air. Some laugh, others stamp their feet to stay warm. Many believe it's a drill. After all, how could a ship like this, a floating city of steel, truly be in danger? At 12:40 a.m., the first lifeboats are loaded. Each one holds space for 65 people. But few will leave their warm cabins for the freezing dark. When Lifeboat 7 is lowered, only 28 people sit inside. More than half the seats are empty. No one yet understands that there will not be enough boats for everyone. Soft, sorrowful piano notes begin under narration. Down in third class, confusion spreads. Families try to climb the stairways, only to find gates blocking their way. Stewards give conflicting orders. The ship's tilt is subtle but growing. Luggage slides across the floors. The sound of rushing water echoes faintly through the steel corridors. Mothers clutch their children tighter. A few begin to pray. In the wireless room, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride continue to tap out distress signals, first CQD, then the newly introduced SOS. Far away, ships hear the call: Carpathia, Olympic, Mount Temple, but they are hours away. The Californian, the nearest ship, remains silent, its operator asleep. The signals bounce across the empty Atlantic like desperate whispers in the dark. At 12:55 a.m., the first lifeboat touches the water. It creaks as it lowers, ropes squealing under tension. Women glance up at the great wall of the ship towering above them, glowing with hundreds of lights. They cannot imagine it disappearing. Those left aboard wave and cheer. They think the boats will soon return, but already the bow is dipping deeper. The Titanic's angle to the horizon grows steeper with every passing minute. Water surges forward through open hatches, flooding stairwells and boiler rooms. The sound of the sea grows louder, an unending hiss, a whisper of inevitability. At 1:10 M. Panic begins to stir, the lights flicker, officers shout orders over the rising wind, passengers push toward the lifeboats, but discipline holds for now. The band continues to play, soft and reassuring, an effort to calm the crowd. The melody drifts across the deck, like a lullaby for a dying ship. Distant orchestral waltz fades beneath the narration. The musicians do not know they are creating history, that their music will be remembered longer than their names. At 1:20 a.m., the tilt becomes impossible to ignore. The bow is now fully submerged, seawater swirling over the deck rails. Inside, furniture slides across floors. In the grand staircase, the clock ticks steadily, water creeping up each step. Andrews, the ship's designer, moves through the corridors, urging passengers to put on lifebelts, begging them to leave. Most still hesitate, unwilling to believe. In first class, disbelief turns to denial. In third, confusion turns to terror. Some begin to cry. Others argue, demand explanations, refuse to leave husbands or brothers behind. The rule women and children first becomes a dividing line between love and survival. At 1:30 a.m., more boats are lowered. Each one fills faster than the last. Lifeboat 14 goes down half, full. Lifeboat 6 drifts away into the blackness, the oars creaking against the ice, cold sea. Above, the Titanic's lights glow like a lantern in a storm, steady, unreal, defiant. Then, somewhere below, an explosion echoes not from fire, but from pressure. A bulkhead collapses. The sound rips through the ship like thunder underwater. People freeze. The music stops. The ocean has reached another compartment. From that moment, fear becomes unstoppable. Strings rise slowly, building tension. At 1:45 a.m., the waterline reaches the bridge. The lifeboats are nearly gone. Still, hundreds remain aboard, clinging to hope, to disbelief, to the ship itself. Some jump into the sea, their screams swallowed by the wind. The temperature of the water is 28 degrees. Death comes in minutes. The band resumes playing slower now, softer, as if to steady the souls left behind. Inside the cabins, candles flicker. In the corridors, footsteps echo. Everywhere, there is motion, the quiet frenzy of people realizing that there are not enough boats, not enough time, not enough miracles. At 2:00 a.m., the tilt grows severe. The ship's stern rises visibly above the surface, the propellers glinting in the faint starlight. Lifeboat 4 leaves the ship, nearly crushed by falling debris. The remaining lifeboats are filled to capacity, 700 people adrift on the black Atlantic, watching in silence as their world sinks before them. The Titanic is now a vision of chaos and grace, the lights still burning, the music still playing, and the sea climbing higher. The air is filled with the sound of prayers, shouts, the groan of metal twisting under impossible strain. The music fades. Only wind and distant voices remain. At this moment, the Titanic is no longer a ship. It is a monument to human pride and fragility, teetering on the edge of history. The time is 2:05 a.m. 15 minutes remain. It is 2:05 a.m. The Titanic has been dying for nearly 2.5 hours. What began as a faint vibration below deck has become an unrecognizable nightmare of sound and motion, a once mighty ship groaning under the crushing weight of the sea. The Atlantic is black glass, littered with fragments of wood, paper, and ice. Around the ship, 20 lifeboats drift at a distance, tiny islands of life in an endless dark. Their passengers watch in silence, too numb to speak. Every eye is fixed on the glowing silhouette of the ship that will soon disappear forever. On board, the decks are steep now, so steep that standing upright is nearly impossible. People cling to railings, lifeboat davits, anything that might keep them from sliding toward the freezing water below. The cold cuts through fabric, through skin, through bone. Each breath turns to mist, lingering for only a second before vanishing into the night. Inside the ship, the last of the lights flicker. Electric bulbs dim, then surge, casting eerie shadows that stretch across corridors now half filled with seawater. The grand staircase, once the symbol of Titanic's beauty, is drowning. Glass shatters, oak panels split, and water pours down like a waterfall over carved banisters. Soft water sounds fade in, rhythmic and heavy. At 2:10 The ship's bow is far beneath the surface. The stern rises higher and higher, its propellers now fully exposed, glistening under the faint light of the stars. The sound that follows is unlike anything the ocean has ever heard, the deep, wrenching scream of steel surrendering to gravity. The ship is breaking apart. Beneath the surface, bulkheads buckle, rivets shear away, and the immense pressure tears the vessel in two. The break occurs near the third funnel, one half sinking, the other still holding the last desperate souls who refuse to let go. A metallic groan echoes, long and low, like the sound of a mountain cracking. Those in the lifeboats see it, the impossible sight of the Titanic's stern lifted nearly vertical against the stars. The last lights glowing dimly like candles in a storm. And then everything falls silent. For a heartbeat, it seems frozen in time, a monument of steel against infinity. Then gravity wins. The stern plunges down, twisting as it falls. Hundreds of people cling to railings, to ropes, to each other, and are swallowed by the sea. The water erupts in a roar of foam and darkness. The lights vanish. The sound of the ship tearing apart echoes deep beneath the surface, a thunder no one will ever hear again. All sound cuts to silence, just the faint hiss of the wind. It is 2:20 a.m. The RMS Titanic is gone. Where moments ago stood the largest ship in the world, there is now only ocean, flat, dark, endless. Debris floats where the deck once gleamed, fragments of wood, overturned chairs, a single piece of music paper drifting across the waves. The people in the water cry out, hundreds of voices, thin and broken, calling for help that will not come. The sound carries over the sea, fading, weakening, dying one by one. The temperature of the water is 28 degrees. In 10 minutes, limbs go numb. In 15, consciousness fades. In 20, silence returns. The lifeboats, scattered in the darkness, hear the screams. Some turn back, but most stay where they are, paralyzed by fear, by confusion, by disbelief. They watch, helpless, as history drowns before their eyes. A single, haunting violin note rises and fades. The stars above shine with cruel indifference. No storm, no waves. Just stillness, the kind that only comes after something enormous ends. For the survivors, time loses meaning. Minutes stretch into eternity. The sea is calm again, as though it has swallowed the evidence of what happened, as though it has no memory of the ship, or the thousands of lives that vanished beneath it. At 3:30 a.m., a faint light appears on the horizon, a ship responding to the distress call at last. The Carpathia, racing through the night, arrives to find only darkness and debris. They pull survivors from lifeboats, one by one, wrapped in blankets, shivering, silent. Of the more than 2,000 souls who left Southampton, only 706 remain alive. Soft orchestral score builds slow, mournful. In the stillness that follows, there are no words, only faces staring into the dawn, numb, hollow, disbelieving. Behind them, the Atlantic stretches endlessly, calm and merciless. As the sun rises, the horizon glows gold and pink. The same light that once glinted off Titanic's decks now reflects on the open sea, a cruel reminder that nature remains untouched, unchanged, unaware. By morning, the ocean will look as it always has. The waves will roll, the gulls will cry, and beneath 2 miles of freezing water, the ship will rest broken, silent, eternal. The music fades to a slow heartbeat rhythm, echoing faintly like the pulse of memory. They called her unsinkable. They said no force on earth could bring her down, but the truth is what sank that night wasn't just a ship. It was an idea, the belief that human mastery could ever stand above the power of nature. And what they never told us about those final hours is not only how the Titanic sank, but how quietly she did it. No explosion, no storm, just silence and the slow surrender of steel to sea. Long pause. Then the faint sound of waves fades into a whisper. For those who listen carefully, the ocean still remembers. Dawn breaks over the Atlantic. The water glows with the first light of morning, pale gold over an ocean that has already forgotten the night's horror. In that light, small boats drift aimlessly. Inside them, the survivors sit motionless, wrapped in silence and soaked wool. Their faces are gray with exhaustion, their eyes unfocused, staring at the place where the Titanic vanished only hours ago. No one speaks. There's nothing left to say. The Carpathia appears on the horizon, her funnels rising like a promise through the mist. When she finally reaches the lifeboats, the survivors are too weak to stand. Sailors lift them one by one from the small crafts, carrying them aboard in near silence. Some weep softly. Others stare into the distance, their minds still trapped somewhere in the freezing dark. Soft sounds of wind and muffled footsteps under narration. On the deck of the Carpathia, blankets are handed out, tea poured, hands held. Captain Rostron orders silence, no celebration, no noise, only care and quiet. The ship's doctor moves from one survivor to the next, tending to frostbite, hypothermia, shock. For every person saved, another 3 have vanished beneath the waves. Some cling to the hope that loved ones might still be found. Others already know, they saw them fall. The only sound now is the ocean calm again, almost serene, as if mocking the chaos it has claimed. At 8:50 a.m., the Carpathia turns west toward New York. In her cargo hold are 20 lifeboats and 706 souls, all that remains of the Titanic. Soft orchestral strings rise, carrying quiet grief. Word of the disaster travels across telegraph wires faster than the ship itself ever moved. In London, in New York, in Paris, disbelief spreads like a shadow. Newspapers rush to print headlines too shocking to believe. The Titanic sunk. Over 1,500 lost. Unsinkable ship destroyed. Families gather outside shipping offices, clutching telegrams, pleading for lists of survivors. The truth takes days to reach them, and when it does, it's often cruelly incomplete. In the following weeks, inquiries are held in both America and Britain. Questions fill the air like smoke. Why were there not enough lifeboats? Why were warnings ignored? Why did a ship designed to defy nature fall so quickly to it? Each testimony paints a picture of arrogance wrapped in tragedy. Officers, engineers, and passengers recall the same haunting moments: the sound of splitting metal, the sight of children left behind, the unbearable calm of the sea. But beneath every story lies the same truth. The Titanic was not sunk by ice alone. It was sunk by belief in perfection, in human mastery, in the illusion that technology could make us untouchable. Soft ambient creaking of ship wood fades under narration. In the years that follow, the world changes. Shipping laws are rewritten. Every vessel must now carry enough lifeboats for all aboard. 24-hour radio watches become mandatory. Ice patrols are established across the North Atlantic. From that night forward, safety at sea will never again be left to chance. Yet for all the lessons learned, something else lingers, something beyond regulations or reports. It's the silence of the sea that night, when the last voices faded and the stars looked down without mercy. That silence still echoes in stories, in photographs, in the rusting hull lying 2.5 miles beneath the waves. Music shifts lower, soft, ghostly piano and ambient water sounds. For 73 years, the Titanic slept undisturbed in the darkness of the ocean floor. Then, in 1985, her resting place was finally discovered, a shattered giant lying in 2 halves, covered in rust and time. The world looked upon her again, not as a ship of dreams, but as a graveyard of human ambition. Even now, more than a century later, she remains frozen in time. Plates still stacked in pantries, shoes still scattered across corridors. A doll, a watch, a lock of hair, reminders that history is not made of steel and rivets, but of lives. Ordinary people who boarded a ship believing they were heading toward a new world and instead became part of a legend that would never fade. Music swells slightly emotional, cinematic tone, and yet the story of the Titanic endures, not because it was the greatest disaster at sea, but because it revealed something deeper about who we are. It showed how fragile our confidence can be, how easily progress turns to pride, and how, in the face of nature, we are all small. Each time someone speaks her name, the Titanic rises again, not from the ocean, but from memory. The flicker of her lights, the echo of her engines, the murmur of her passengers at dinner all replay in the imagination of those who still wonder what it must have felt like to be there. To hear the music stop, to feel the deck tilt, to look up and see the stars for the last time, long pause, then soft waves fade in again. At the bottom of the Atlantic, the ship still rests. Her bow points east toward the dawn she never reached. Her clock hands frozen forever at 2:20 a.m. A century has passed, yet her story remains eternal, a reminder carved in salt and steel that even the grandest dreams can sink, and that every triumph of man eventually meets the humility of nature. Soft final piano note rings out, followed by silence. The Titanic's final hours will always belong to history, but her lesson, her quiet warning, belongs to all of us.